Welcome to an edition of Stories from the Edge. I've had the privilege of working with Ed Soo Hoo for about 4 years now and constantly learning from this guy what he can do in front of customers, what he's done in the past, how he relates to people and just little lessons along the way. What's unique about Ed is he tells stories, he gets you involved and gets you excited, but all the while we're talking about either how to grow your business, how to grow yourself, or even taking advantage of technology to do all of these things. So Ed Soo Hoo, obviously welcome to your show, but thanks for spending time with us today. We're going to kick this off the same way we're going to kick off every one of these. You've got a story for us, and what is it? What are we going to learn today? What are we going to talk about?
Today, thank you, Esco. I really appreciate the introduction. The the opportunity to kind of share some of these stories is one that helped me remember some of them. That, as you
Right?
age, there are a number of things that happen to you, right? And memory is one of them. But given that, one of the things I wanted to do is kind of share some of these little stories, anecdotes, and challenges that I face personally. And some of these personal stories I think may resonate with other people.
Okay.
Right. So today's story is titled Paging Ed Soo Hoo. Now, what does that mean?
Okay, I was gonna say, paging it. Okay, all right, go on.
So, getting started in sales, but that's another story. I ended up working for one of the largest hardware companies in its day, called Wang Laboratories. And getting started into my first big company, I was the what I would call the perfect negative trinity. I was the last sales rep hired,
Okay,
given the worst territory you could ever imagine, and then selling to the federal government.
but that happens. I mean, you could be that sales guy that gets that blessing.
And so when you think about that, I never sold to the Fed before. I said I could
Right.
barely spell Fed. I'm learning a new large company, processes and branch managers and quotas. And so what I thought was really amazing was getting inside and trying to determine, how do I get started? How do I get started in this? And so the interesting thing was, with these three things that are what I call three strikes: run of the litter, worst territory, and selling to the government. I struggled for
Right.
months on end. And I was almost let go, but that's another story. This story is about having struggled for a number of months. I found out that we won a national contract with the FDIC for office automation.
Okay.
Very excited, right? And the FDIC had multiple regional offices all across the United States, one of which was in the San Francisco region where I was based. And there was a regional office that had 13 stories and 1,500 employees. So very excited about knowing that we had the national contract. I grabbed it, got an appointment with the chief administrative officer on a Monday morning at 10 o'clock. What a great opportunity, right? I had
Kicking
a
off the week right. I love it.
I got a national contract, got to buy from me. Here we go, right? I'm going to make my number. So I meet with Joan at 10 a.m.
Okay.
And I said, hi, I'm your local Wang representative. I understand we have a national contract. I have the contract with me here. I'm here to provide any services and orders that you would like in this region. She goes, that's awfully nice of you to stop by, but we buy everything from headquarters. So we really don't need to talk to you.
Uh, okay.
Oh, and I said, I looked at the clock. I said, oh, 10:06. I think we're
What
at
you
the
gonna
end of
do
our
now?
meeting. And she was very polite, right? So I'm walking out, tail tucked between my legs. I'm walking out and I'm going by the front desk. And as it turned out, the person at the desk was paging somebody in the building, 13 floors.
So
So I
hang on, hang on. Paging. You might want to catch us up on what paging is at
so
that time.
I'm gonna take you back in time. 1983,
Okay.
before text messaging, before even email.
Oh,
They
oh,
used
yes.
to do things called memos on pink slips. They actually typed things in writing, and they used to page or announce on
Okay.
the loudspeaker across the building, 13 floors. And I stopped as she was finishing the page, and I turned around. I said, "Does that page go through all 13 floors?" She goes, "Yes, sir, it does." I said, "Well, thanks very much." So I went back, and then I go, what can I do to kind of get my name out there? So you know what? What I did was I had myself paged. I called the front desk and I had myself paged 10 minutes of 9, 10 minutes of 12, and 10 minutes of 5 on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. That's all I did. After she said, we'll page, I would just hang up, right? And it was funny because on Friday, I showed up at 10 a.m. at the front desk, and all I said was, "Hi, my name's Ed Soo Hoo." And she just looked at me and smiled. She goes, "You've been paged the last few days." I said, "Really?" I said, "I was here on Monday talking to Joan," which was true,
Right.
talking about office automation. But the person I was really looking to have a conversation with is your director of IT, Herb. And look, everyone, luck and dumb luck. You got to take it wherever it comes. Herb was walking down the hall
Oh,
as I had
wow.
that conversation. And she goes, "There he is," and pointed straight at Herb. Herb looks at her, looks at me. And I said, "Can you introduce me to Herb?" She goes, "Sure." So she waved and beckons Herb to come over. And she goes, "Herb, this is Ed Soo Hoo." And Herb looks around, he goes, "You've been paged the last few days." I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "I was here on Monday, true, talking to Joan, true,
True.
about office automation, true,
True.
but I never got to share with her that we can actually create a universal workstation of office automation and 3278 terminal emulation. So you only have one workstation at the desk to optimize your efficiency." He goes, "You guys can do that?" I said, "Yes, we can." He goes, "Well, come in my office." So we stroll down to his office. We're chatting away for like a half an hour. He's all excited, and then a man pops his head into the office door of Herb, and Herb goes, "Mike, this is Ed Soo Hoo." And Mike goes, "You've been paged the last few days." Now Mike heads up all office automation for the FDIC. So we ended up forming a relationship and just chatting, right? And Mike goes, "I'm building out my budget for the office automation purchases." I said, "Great." I said, "Are you using a plus 20 or a plus 10?" He goes, "What is that?" I said, "I learned from the past that when you submit budgets, they never give you what you want. They cut you 10 or 20%. So I want you to up level your request by 10 or 20%. And he goes, "Huh. So how do I know what to order?" I said, "You know what? One of the things I would love to do is tell me how many people are doing these kinds of workloads and
Right.
how much printing, et cetera. And I'll give you a formula how to look at what to budget." So we're chatting away, and then I formed a really good relationship with him. One night, 5 o'clock, almost 5 o'clock, I walk into Mike's office and I said, "Mike, there's a buzz in the building. What's going on? I can feel it." He goes, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, there's a buzz. What is it?" He goes, "Oh, Washington, D.C. dweebs are upstairs. They're talking about what we need to do here as a strategy." I said, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Huh." And he goes, "I know that look, and I know what you mean by huh." And I said, "Well," he goes, well, he looks at his watch. He goes, "It's 5 o'clock for me, Ed. I'm out of here. I'll see you." He just left me. So I took it upon myself to take the elevator up to the top floor, walked and strolled by the meeting room. And there's a plate glass door, you see everything, and there's like 8 of them talking.
Right.
And I'm going like, how do you break into a meeting?
Right.
Right? And I'm going thinking, I said, "I
That you
know
clearly weren't invited to.
I'm not invited. I'm not a employee."
Right.
So I walked into the break room kitchen and I made a fresh pot of coffee. And then once it was fully ready to go, I grabbed the coffee out and I just walked in the meeting room. I said, "Who wants coffee?" Everybody goes, "Ah, great." And I would pour the coffee. I said, "Hi, my name's Ed Soo Hoo. Hi, my name's Ed Soo Hoo." And they go like, "They talk about you here." They said, "Which department are you here at FDIC?" I said, "Oh, I'm not an employee." They said, "You're not?" I go, "No, no. I work for Wang Labs, which we have the national contract." And they said, like, "So what are you doing here?" I said, "I'm sharing some ideas and some concepts around how to automate and optimize your operations." And so here's some things that we're talking. And they're like, "Huh." So they broke up, went back to Washington, D.C., and they shared whatever I shared with them. And then all of a sudden, I'm introduced to the regional director. Mike walks me into the regional director of the FDIC of San Francisco. This guy's a hitter. His name is Tony from Boston. So Mike goes, "This is Ed Soo Hoo." He goes, "Hey, I hear you guys been, you've been talking with my team." I said, "Yeah, Tony." I said, "I understand you're from Boston." He goes, "Yeah." I said, "I'm sorry." He goes, "What are you sorry for?" He goes, and I said, "Well, Bill Buckner booted the ball, the ground ball, and the Sox lost the World Series." And he goes, "Do you have to remind me?" I said, "Well, Tony, everything from here is up." So we got to know each other and it was funny. And then Tony calls me the next week. He goes, "Ed, the big dogs from DC are coming into town and they want to meet you." I said, "Oh, really?" He goes, "Yeah, we'll set up the meeting. And then when we set up the meeting, I want you to sit next to me." I said, "I don't want to sit next to you." He goes, "What?" I said, "I don't want to sit next to you." He goes, "But Ed, I'm the regional." I said, "Tony, I know who you are." He goes, "But so why won't you sit next to me?" I said, "I already got you." I said, "I don't need to sit next to you." I said, "So do me a favor. Whoever the power broker is in that team, make sure the chair on the right-hand side is empty. Make sure that that's where I sit next to." He goes, "You're a funny little guy." And I said, "Yeah, thanks." So so we go to the meeting room, is what they call the fishbowl, right? It's all
Right.
glass,
Yeah.
everything. Everybody's sitting down, milling around. And I'm standing out in the outside, just waiting for everybody to sit down because you want to make an entrance. That's number one.
Okay.
Never mill around, right? They're all because they're talking internally amongst themselves, right? And they won't say anything if there's an outsider. So I wanted them to do all of their, rumors and all this other stuff out of the way. So when they all sat down, I walked in. There was only one chair open next to Pat, the decision maker. So I sit down next to Pat. "Nice to meet you. Really appreciate it." Tony starts the meeting. "Everyone, really appreciate you being here. Today's meeting is about Wang Labs and the national contract. And we have Ed Soo Hoo here to talk about some of the capabilities." And he goes, "Ed, you're up." I stand up. I said, "Well, thanks, Tony. I really appreciate it." And Pat stops and he goes, "Wait a minute." And looks up at me and he goes, "Before you get started," Ed, and he took a little piece of paper out of his jacket pocket, hand scribbled notes. He kind of looked at it and looked at me. He goes, "Before you get started, I have some questions." And this is what I call the Heisman, right? He's going to stiff arm
Yeah, I
me,
was gonna say already.
say,
Wow.
"I'm going to stump the chump. This guy, I'm going to make sure he understands I'm the guy with the knowledge, the power, etc."
Yeah, yeah.
So recognizing that, I said, "Okay, what are your questions?" He goes, "I'd like to know if your systems can talk to a mainframe." I said, "Okay, I can answer that. But before I do, I'd like to ask you a few questions." He goes, "Sure." And he had five team members
Yeah.
from DC with him, right? His pit bulls. And I said, "Before I say yes or no, I need to understand what version level you're running on the OS on your Amdahl mainframe. Then I need to understand what your 3274 cluster controller firmware levels are. And are you running BiSync or SNA? From there, I need to understand your 3278 terminal emulators, etc." I said, "If you can provide me that, I can say yes or no." He looked around, looked at me, looked around at his team. He goes, and no one had the answer.
Of course not.
And he goes, "Touche."
Yeah.
And I said, Pat, why don't we dispense with the other 9 trick questions that you have and let me get on with it? And he took the piece of paper, threw it over his shoulder. He goes, okay, right? So I did my presentation, and it was really a lot of fun. I'm going back and forth and talking about the value. I finished, and I said, and it was Wednesday. I said, well, tonight, if you're going to have a dinner night out, those here in San Francisco, if you're not familiar with it, if you like steaks or prime rib, Julia's is really great, etc. Have a great time and then a good flight home tomorrow, Thursday. And Pat goes, do you have any brochures? I said, of course I do. I have a set of 6. And I handed them out, and I said, now, I want you to do me a favor. They said, what's that? I said, I want you not to read the brochures tonight. I want you to enjoy San Francisco. My ask is that you put these brochures under your pillow tonight. They're all looking like, what?
Okay.
They go, well, why would I do that? I said, I just want you to sleep on it. I said, now, when you're on the plane and you have some downtime, perhaps you may want to open up the brochures and review what I said with the documents and so on. But tonight, enjoy yourselves in San Francisco. Tomorrow, have a great flight home. So they did that. They fly home. Friday was my litmus test. I called every one of them, all 6, at 10 minutes of 12 their time. And knowing that they were all going out to lunch.
Yeah.
So I left 6 voicemails.
Right.
I got 6 return calls. And they said, Ed, we really appreciate it, blah, 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 kept going and going. And it was really kind of fascinating where a week later, I got a call from Mike. And Mike goes, DC is thinking about asking your company for you to run the account nationwide.
Snap.
What? He goes, Ed, they want you to come to DC and meet the big dog, John. John has size 16 shoes. And the reason I say that, because when I met John face to face in his office, he put his feet on the desk, and all I could see was the outline of his shoe. I could see the size on the bottom, 16.
Wow.
I'm like, and he goes, Ed, we're doing this. I said, John, I'm looking forward to this. He goes, I want you to meet my 3 direct reports. So the next day, we're preparing. The national sales executive, Bill, was mad as a wet hen.
This is your guy. You works for Wang with you, right?
He was mad as heck. We blah, blah, blah. Why are they doing that? What did you say to them? I go, nothing. I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do, is inform them, etc.
Right.
Well, I'm in charge of this meeting. I said, okay, fine. I'll just be the little guy on the side. You call me when you need me. So we go in the meeting room. There are 20 chairs in the room. I said, what the heck is this? He goes, it's our meeting room. I said, I can see that. You got 20 chairs and they're going to spread out. There's only 3 coming, right? He goes, yeah. I said, move all the chairs out except for 3 without arms in front of us. 2 chairs in front, you and I with arms. We're going to manage and control this meeting. And he goes, huh. So the 3 guys walk in, and Bill says, huh, I'm Bill. I'm the national manager of the contract, blah, blah, blah. And he kind of goes through his presentation, and all 3 pulled out their day timers. This is for mobile phones, right? So they pulled out their day timers and they're looking at, what am I going to do on Tuesday? Oh my God, I got lunch on Wednesday. And they're not paying any attention to Bill whatsoever.
Right.
Bill finishes oblivious. I mean, totally oblivious to what was going on in front of him, because he had to get the presentation out.
Yeah, go through your slides.
The audio.
Yeah.
So he goes, yeah, and we flew Ed Soo Hoo out here. Ed, I said, oh, hey, thanks, Bill. Really appreciate it. I stand up, and they're still looking at their date timers, and I don't say a word. I just stand there.
Dead silence.
Dead silent. And finally, one of the FDIC guys look up, and I shrug my shoulders, I hand my hands up, I'm like, what? What? And they go like, oh, and he jabs the next guy and the other guy, and they put their date timers down. I said, now we can begin. Here's what we're going to do. Here's why we're going to do it. This is how we've done it in the past. Here's our assurances, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And we walked out. And they said, this is the man we want. This is the guy we want to run the account nationwide. Otherwise, there's no deal. And it was an amazing set of experience, to say the least. I mean, I learned so much from this that it gave me sort of a insights. One,
Yeah.
to provide whatever it takes to work with a client and to be creative. Paging Ed
Yes.
Soo Hoo was not in the playbook for sales.
It still isn't.
No.
Well, no, not really.
And then the ability to sit down with people and just to be as real as you can. And
Yeah.
there's some very interesting things that I found out where I disarmed the regional director with the first 2 minutes
Yeah.
by saying, "Hey, I hear you're from Boston, and I'm sorry that Bill Buckner booted it." And ever since then, to this day, this is 1983. To this day, I still have email exchanges with everyone from the FDIC.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
So the relationship, the power of connecting is so critical. And not to be afraid. When someone says we don't want to do business with you because we buy everything that's just the beginning. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean they said no. They just said we don't know any better.
We don't know any different. Yeah.
So that's the story of paging Ed Soo Hoo.
So paging Ed Soo Hoo, it's just a clear demonstration of a lot of tactics that I've seen you use since we've been working together, and a lot of them very cheeky, Ed Soo Hoo. So we'll get into some of those a little later on. Stay tuned for the next episode. Ed, thanks for your time, and we'll catch everyone next time. Bye,
Thanks
everybody.
so much.